Welcome back to the Brainrich podcast. I'm your host, Natasha, and today we're diving deep into the world of occupational therapy and ADHD. We're joined by the wonderful Casey, an occupational therapist who's passionate about supporting neurodivergent children and their families. Casey's here to help us understand the other side of play, offering practical strategies for navigating sensory, developmental, and emotional challenges. She's the creator of an amazing program designed to empower parents and help their kids thrive. So get ready to learn, grow, and embrace the beautiful complexities of neurodivergent minds. Let's give a warm welcome to Casey. You're an OT practitioner. You see other side of parenting. From your expertise, how can we help parents to be prepared for this school year?
I feel like that transition back to school is so hard. It's hard for neurotypical. It's hard for parents. It's hard for the kids. It's hard for the teachers. There's just like so many levels. The answer can vary depending on the kid and how experienced the parent is. And if they're dealing with anxiety, so it may be as simple as sticking to a bedtime and wake up routine each day before school. It can be complicated and complex, but it's a big transition after summer. I know most parents that I've been talking to regret not sticking to a schedule and a routine over the summer. I know the idea sounds so liberating, like we're just going to fly by the seat of our pants, like go with whatever, but nobody's going with any of it. And then the kids are on their screens and then the behavior is worse. And so really the best thing to do is just, routine all through summer and into school. But I know that's not always realistic.
Is there certain tools that can help child to regulate, for example, if they have some meltdown, if they have certain issues, because some kids they can
Yeah.
really express what they feel inside, and it's super challenging as a parent. You've seen your kids kind of struggle in that way. So, is there anything that could help with that?
Yeah, definitely. And again, that's sort of a spectrum in and of itself. You have, and actually, we don't even call it nonverbal anymore in the autistic community, but you do have children on the spectrum that are literally nonverbal and cannot speak. And then you have children with ADHD with such severe anxiety that they almost go into a nonverbal place where they can't respond. And then you have young children that just don't know how to identify the feelings they're feeling and articulate it to you. So that's like a broad spectrum of emotions and things you're dealing with. But so something that you could do for all of those is to get proprioceptive input. And I know you know about this, but that is just the inner joints and it's compression and traction. So hanging, you can put an over the door hang thing. You can even just do, I tell my clients to do like family plank challenges where they're holding plank or doing push-ups. And it can be against the wall if everyone's weak and you can't quite do a push-up yet. The idea is that you're getting that feedback into your joints because it actually helps the body to release serotonin. And serotonin is that neurotransmitter that makes us feel calm and ready and safe and in control. And those things just in and of itself are going to, decrease that feeling of stress and anxiety. So that's a simple, effective thing you can do. And the other thing that I love, and I wish I had them with me to show you, but one of my clients made these, she's a really good artist, and she made almost like these avatar characters that express how she's feeling so that she can show them to her teacher or her mom. Like, I'm considering what you're saying, but I'm really stressed right now. I'm trying my best. And the character like matched that feeling because her affect is somewhat flat. And so those visual things are nice. So having a visual symbol, if you will, and even just since we just had the Olympics, there was this great article that Michael Phelps, his mom is amazing, and she is a teacher and a principal, and they had a little symbol that they would do. They would hold up a C to each other. And whenever he needed to compose himself, he would see her doing the C. And that would help him kind of calm. And like she was freaking out one day in the kitchen and she looked at him at the dining table and he did this to her. So, of course, that's not going to work for, a child that's severely on the spectrum. But again, I say that it's a wide range of things you can do. But either way, it's a visual cue. With my own daughter, I will look at her in the eyes and say, honey, I'm feeling stressed right now. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I love you. You're safe. I'll be back. Just so she knows, like, I need a moment. She sees healthy coping, but if I don't self-regulate, I might yell. So I know that's like a broad answer, but normally in the stress of getting ready, that everyone's more stressed. We're trying to get out the door on time. We're trying to wear the right outfit and have your hair brushed, and you're dealing with all those sensory things that they hate, and you're doing it in a time crunch.
I hope it's going to be helpful for someone who need to hear this. You just have to understand if your child comes from school and doesn't want to talk, instead of probably going and, hey, honey, what's happened? You're going to have to almost get down to their level. I see something wrong with you. I see something is bugging you. Do you want to share? Do you want to talk? Do you want to have a minute? Something like that. That's kind of what I did with my kids when my oldest went to public school my
I
way.
think I think with that, generally when you're wanting kids to talk to you, I try to think of like parallel play where people are playing alongside of each other. Like you might both be playing with dolls next to each other. So when it comes to conversation, if there can be where it takes the pressure off of them. So like if y'all are both, coloring, or in the case of some boys that play video games, dad and son might be playing video games, but something where they can be kind of doing something else kind of invites more of that conversation so they don't feel that pressure. But when they get home from school or on their way home, they're just probably overstimulated. And I think the most important thing to do is just get like their actual blood sugar up. Like think of a diabetic person and the blood sugar crash. Like they probably also just need to elevate their own blood sugar, and also back to that proprioceptive input, a little bit of crunch. I have a couple kids where I specifically am like, as soon as you pick her up, be ready to have the chewy jerky or the crunchy carrots or something where we're going to get the blood sugar up, and we're just going to get the right neurotransmitters going. So they're even in a place to tell you about their day or process their day.
Cases specify what type of food is good to elevate blood sugar, because some people interpret it as like, oh, I need to give them candy or
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, carrots have sugar in them, right? So that's why I say carrots, because it's crunchy, right? And then it does have the sugar in it. Now, I will say this could be controversial, but is powerful for releasing dopamine. Okay. And when used effectively, you can use it in your favor. The caveat is that most kids are getting so much sugar throughout the day that it requires a whole lot more to help stimulate them. So if I tell a high school student, just take a slow sip of Gatorade throughout your test to keep that going, that's going to help him, but not if he's just had Krispy Kreme for breakfast and sugar, 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 sugar. So it's one of those things where some is actually good and helpful, but the more you do, the more you need in order to get that rise. And of course, I'm not a nutritionist, but I know enough to know that. So I try to think of not necessarily candy unless they're not had any other sugar all day. And sugar is in milk, and sugar is in bread, and sugar is in a whole lot more than just sweet.
if someone is going through the occupational therapy, what would be your tips about the home space? Maybe some products that are beneficial, because not everyone can attend therapy 5 times a week. Sometimes parents attend maybe once or twice a week. But what can they do in between those visits at home
Yeah.
and
So
help to support that?
majority of any adult or child that's in therapy is going to be with home carryover. What they're doing at home is more important than anything because that's all the other hours of the day. So I would say, if you can, pay attention to what your child likes and what interests them. I find a lot of people don't know what their child likes because they're on the screens, and that's kind of like all they know they like. So it might take some digging and working and finding like, what do they like? And I actually have a wonderful OT that I connected with on Instagram that gave me this really neat inventory to kind of help prompt. And so once you discover what they like, give them more of that. Okay. And then whatever they're constantly doing, if they're constantly running in circles, then they probably like to spin. If they're probably jumping on the couch, they probably like to bounce. So you might want to invest in a mini trampoline or have a cheap mattress that they're allowed to jump on. And so let that just kind of like peel it back and let them show you what it is that they're seeking, because that's probably what they want more of. If they run to the playground and jump on the swing, then get an overhead door attachment to swing. I think it doesn't have to be that complicated, but just pay attention to what they like. And then as far as I think some will tell you, have this space for homework, and this is where they do their homework. And I think that works for some, but not for all. We try to make homework a little more fun, hide the homework, and I may have it hiding in the bath. And then they get in the bathtub with some pillows and then they do their work there. Or, it does vary. I let them do it on the window. I make it more interesting just because homework can be really challenging. So I try to make it fun. And then overall, as an item, I think that is a must for actually neurotypical and neurodivergent are these visual timers. I don't know if you've seen these before. They have
Mhm.
so many different kinds. But most of us want to know when the end is coming. Like if we're on a flight, we want to know like how much longer till we land. And if we're in school, like when is this class over? So kids are no different. They want to know how long are you expecting me to do this? It's the worst. And you're like, oh, just 5 more minutes, just one more. And they just use all their energy just to do the one they just did. And you're telling them one more. I think
I didn't know about these. This is the first time I'm seeing it.
yeah, they have them in different colors. They have all kinds, but they're like not expensive. And then even if I'm going to have them do a challenge that they don't like, brushing their teeth, which they have to do every day, but they still hate it, you're still giving them this. And so it's just so great, even if you're trying. Anyway, I swear by these. We
Oh,
also
great.
have analog clocks everywhere. These are like $6 from Walmart. You can do the same thing by just coloring that section in, right? Just color that section in, red and or blue or whatever. And that's what they do. But what I like about these is that they're silent. So if they're in the middle of something and they actually want to keep going, it doesn't beep and distract them. It just does like a little light. So
Wow, I want to try with my kids now that I'll be homeschooling.
well, and I think when you're keeping that in mind, each child works at a different pace and it depends on their subject. But I've seen anywhere from like 3 to 5, 2 to 5 minutes times the age of the child is how long they can usually attend. That kind of gives you an idea of how long you might want to work on one subject. And then I would start with that. And then some kids do better with time based, and some people do better with task based, meaning once you finish your math, you can get up. Well, if math took 2 hours, that might be a struggle. So you may want to be like, okay, after this many minutes, you can get up. And that would be more time based and not task based. So
That's interesting. I need to try it. Is there anything else you can think of?
I have a feeling that anyone that's listening to this probably puts a lot of effort into giving the best environment for their child. I would assume, meaning making sure they're getting adequate sleep. Kids probably need more sleep than we realize, and sleep deprivation compounds. So if they stay up late 1 or 2 nights, and they miss just a couple hours of sleep, well, by the end of the week, that's like a 10-hour deficit. So that's really impactful. And I think in our society of just go, 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 run, 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 kids are doing so many things. Like they're really not ever coming home and playing because they go to school all day. And usually many do sports afterwards. So they are tired. And I think maybe even well intending parents may miss that, but that's something to really focus on, making sure that they're getting a good sleep, adequate sleep night after night after night. I think you'll see a huge difference. I know with my child, it's really hard when she is tired. So making sure of that and just getting enough water and getting the right nutrients to function. I mean, those are just basic things, but they're really powerful. And then getting a lot of movement, because again, our society over the years has really changed and it's very sedentary, and our brains grow with movement. And so kids aren't doing a whole lot of that. And we're just asking a lot of them. We're basically asking them to be like business people sitting. So incorporating that movement when you can, and remembering that people like what monkey see, monkey do, right? We actually do have mirror neurons. Like when a child watches you, that's how I think about babies that learn as they grow up. They start carrying the baby like they see their mom doing. So if your child is seeing you on your phone all the time, that's going to be normal to them. And so it's hard because, like, oh, we're adults, we can do what we want. Yeah, but is it beneficial? So it's like my husband and I recently said a thing where we're like, okay, at 4 o'clock, we're going to put our phone down. Well, that stinks because I get home at 4 o'clock, but really demonstrating what it is you're expecting. And so the screens are just a real, real hard thing. I know that you can learn a lot from them, but the truth is they're just not beneficial for the neurodivergent kiddos and regulating their dopamine. So keeping the kids with minimal screen time, but then modeling that as well. Ooh, I know that's hard to hear.
Yeah.
But those are big tips, big, easy, but hard tips.
My friend, she's really good training dogs. What she's saying is kind of interesting. She's like, it's not about the dog, it's about the dog's owner, right? So when she has people coming and it's like, hey, can you work with my dog? She will look at the person. Can I work with you? Before I can see your dog, can I work with you? It's the same thing for parents.
I just want to like record that and like preach it, because it is 1,000% true. And parents affect so much of their children's behavior, and it's hard because we repeat the way we were spoken to. And like in general, I feel like men just have like a lower more commanding tone of voice. And so just the way that a dad says something to a child can really affect their response. And same for me when families come to me, they don't know that most of the work we're going to do is with them. We are of course going to address the child directly, but also a lot of it is that as well, and mom too, because again, moms are usually a little softer typically, and the kids take advantage more of mom than dad. So there's just some certain patterns, and I bet it is that way with dogs.
Whenever she said that analogy, I was like, oh my God, you can relate it for sure. It's like,
Yeah,
wow.
love that.
Casey, can you tell a little bit about your program?
Yeah,
Can you share how it works? Yeah.
I would love to talk about that. I have been practicing as a therapist and just direct one-on-one care for a while. And the thing that I'm finding is it's pretty insurance driven, healthcare in general. So the goals that we're working on are very specific toward a test that they took and didn't meet. And in the school system, it's very, very much benchmark specific to like a handwriting goal or very classroom based. And then we're back to back seeing kids, and we don't really have a ton of time for parent education. We just don't, because it's not what we're there for. And we don't have time for it. And then we're running late. The problem is then you don't see a lot of carryover. And that goes back to your question, like, what are they supposed to do between? You have that part where I'm like, man, I'm just never able to give the parents enough. Right. And then I have this other component where I'm seeing a lot of kids get diagnosed as ADHD. And I think some of them have ADHD, but I honestly think a lot of them don't. I think a lot of them are just on screens, and they never properly developed through being babies, and they don't have routine and structure, or they're not moving a lot. Like, I think it's a lot of other things that we know from research that exacerbates those ADHD symptoms. And so when they get to the classroom and can't do the things, they're just quickly labeled that. I just saw that theme over and over again. So that's why I created a program that would address all that stuff, basically, where I'm getting to work with the parents, because if I can equip them, then they're set, right? Like, how cool is that? Like, oh, okay, I know how to do this. And it changes, because the problems that a 7-year-old has is going to be different than a 3-year-old, but it may be that same foundational thing. So it's an 8-week program where we have these modules they listen to, and then we actually meet individually, like one-on-one each week. I love to meet with mom and dad, or mom and stepdad and dad and stepmom all together, so everyone's on the same page, because that cohesiveness and that consistency is really, really valuable for kids. They're dealing with a lot when they have different parents acting different ways and different teachers. So I like to really work with the whole family, and we do a sensory profile, we do primitive reflexes, we do vision, executive functioning, cerebellum, behavior, sleep, environmental factors. I mean, it truly covers all the things that contribute to those ADHD symptoms.
I haven't heard actually a specific program for parents. So I think this is something unique, because usually if you think about occupational therapy, you would think something geared towards the child. But as we
Yeah.
as we uncovered, it's not always about the child. It starts with parents.
I mean, it's really true. And I think there's just not a lot of opportunities for them. And I spoke with a mom today. She's been taking her kid to OT for a long, long, long time. And she's like, whoa, just in that, I do complimentary 30-minute calls just to kind of point people in the right direction, see if they're a good fit for my program and if I'm a good fit for them, because that's not always the case. But she was really like just amazed with the things we were saying that they haven't yet really uncovered or even gotten to address in traditional OT. So that's why it's good. And of course, I do work directly with the child maybe a couple times just to assess primitive reflexes and that kind of thing. But for the most part, it's with the parent.
How would parent know if the therapy is actually effective? You said someone has been going for a long, long time. I assume they're not enjoying it too. They would probably want to see results faster, right? So is there a way to access those results, the progression faster?
That's a good question, because I think for most of us, parents are just tired. And for them, that's like it sounds bad, but they can kind of just check out like an hour where their kid gets to be with somebody else and they're doing things that are productive. And then they're just kind of okay with it. And maybe they don't know that there could be actual like results. So just for example, this particular child was working on emotional regulation. So the therapist, the OT is like, well, how do you think that made that person feel? And how do you think they felt when you said that? My thing with that is that the executive functioning isn't fully developed until like 20 to 25. So first of all, we're talking about a 9-year-old who is also ADHD. So her executive functioning is 3 years behind. So we're talking to a 6-year-old, asking her to think about the feelings of someone so that she can react differently to that child in a week from now. Whoa, that's too much.
Wow.
That's just too much, right? They don't have the ability to look into the future that far at that age. So instead, we need to be teaching more concrete, tangible skills for mom to say, let's go through some practice interacting. Let's practice facial expressions together. How do you think I'm feeling right now? You know, things like
Mhm.
that. So I think it's just a matter of, okay, but how would you know all that unless the child really opened up to you about that session or the therapist told you? So I actually don't know how a parent would know that other than to just come find me on Instagram.
Casey, how can they find you on Instagram?
So I'm ADHD Solutions with Casey. I'm also on TikTok. I'm OT with Casey over there. It's a wider audience. And I focus on kind of all ages, babies and all that. And then, but on Instagram, I really do focus on those ADHD type symptoms, homework, school, IEPs, that kind of thing, tips and tricks at ADHD Solutions. And I have a website as well that's linked in my Instagram with more details about my program.
Awesome. Thank you. And Casey, maybe a few more tips. I see you have a Brainrich Kids gym behind you. So you said you're working one-on-one. How do you use it?
Oh, let me count the ways. Ah, I mean, this thing is just, it's really awesome, personal use and kiddos because, it's inviting and it's something right here to do for them. It's open ended, which is nice, but it can be closed ended because open ended play is great for kids that are creative and like it. But some kids are very regimented and they don't want open ended. They want to know how to play on it. So we can really create an obstacle course. Which I often do in therapy and with my own kids, where we'll start here, go across the monkey bars. We've got this swing, we've got this swing, where they're rope swinging, they're getting stronger. It's honestly, it's so endless, but they find things that they're really good at. And I see as we've gone on, initially my kids couldn't hang upside down from there and now they can. So it's kind of awesome because from my perspective, I'm like, oh, their vestibular system is maturing, and they're just like, oh, I'm flipping.
I like how from your scientific brain, it's like, okay, tick, 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 we got this.
Yeah, no, I really am. And even with the monkey bars, when you can have a kid progress toward really alternating the arms, that's really tricky. I can't do it. But if you notice that that's very, very good for the cerebellum, and all the research now, with the newer research is showing with autism and ADHD that the cerebellum is highly affected, not just the prefrontal cortex. And the cerebellum is doing more than balance. It's doing that emotional control and regulation and judgment. So just by, and this is like kind of nerding out stuff, but just by them doing crossways on the monkey bars, we're working on that.
That's so cool. I had so much fun talking with you today. Any closing thoughts that you think were missed? Something that we can add?
You're probably more equipped than you realize with what you already have. And so many times, especially on TikTok, like this one video in particular was like, oh, I can't afford that. I can't afford that. And that's a terrible way to feel that you're not able to provide for your child what they need. And I want to say that you can in a small space. Yes, with these gyms, but also just an over the head swing with some bars to pull up on. Right. And then just with your consistency and love, you can empower them more than you realize. I think it's a lot on us, but I think that's why it's so important for us first be regulated so that we can help regulate them. When you tell your child like, okay, pick up the clothes and they don't do it, and you're like, okay, fine, just pick up your shirt. Like, whoop, there goes our tone of voice and there goes that. So it doesn't have to cost a lot financially. It just takes just a heart willing to maybe adapt a few things and maybe invest just like, $20, $30 into something. And if that's not profitable, just doing the family push-ups together and anything y'all do together. Cause at the end of the day, they really just want your love and attention. And that's the most important thing.
That's awesome. Once again, tell where people can find you and where to find your program.
Yes. ADHD Solutions with Casey on Instagram. And my website is Other Side of Play. And my TikTok is OT with Casey.
Awesome. If you find this useful, please check it out. Casey shares a lot of great information on her Instagram channel. And you can also reach out for a consultation, right?
Yep. Complimentary.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. It was great talking with you.